The Indian Parliament is gearing up for a high-stakes legislative showdown over an amendment to the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, or FCRA. This specific bill has triggered massive international backlash. Lawmakers in the United States are leading the charge, publicly claiming this legislation is a direct attack on Christians. These U.S. politicians are raising the stakes, openly warning that passing this amendment could cause serious damage to U.S.-India bilateral relations. India's Ministry of External Affairs is not backing down. They are pushing back fiercely, stating firmly that domestic legislative decisions are strictly an internal matter. Why would a routine bureaucratic rule regarding financial compliance in New Delhi cause a cultural meltdown in Washington, D.C.? Let's look at exactly what the FCRA Amendment does. It places strict regulations on how foreign funds enter India. If an NGO fails to comply with these rules, the government gains the power to seize their assets. India's Home Ministry has defended the bill by clarifying that these rules are entirely religion-neutral. The legislation is strictly about sovereign financial security and tracking the flow of foreign money. Washington's outrage over this becomes complicated when you realize the United States enforces an almost identical law. It's called the Foreign Agents Registration Act, or FARA, and it exists specifically to monitor foreign influence within America's own borders. The U.S. regularly implements unilateral, protectionist policies without consulting India. They hike up fees for international students and tighten visa restrictions, often with little warning. When the U.S. passes these laws, India respects them as internal matters, regardless of how heavily they hit Indian citizens living and working abroad. The United States utilizes the exact same legal mechanics to protect its own borders. That means the American outrage over India's FCRA cannot genuinely be about financial policy. The true motive is buried somewhere else entirely. To find that motive, we need to look at the loudest critic of the bill, U.S. lawmaker Riley Moore, a fiercely loyal supporter of the America First political faction. A quick look at his domestic track record reveals a very specific ideology. He frequently publishes articles arguing that America is and must always remain a Christian nation. To understand why he is attacking India's financial regulations, we have to look past geopolitics entirely and examine the internal demographics of the United States. This chart shows the religious affiliation of the U.S. population over time. In 2007, the Christian population was dominant, sitting securely at 78%. Over the next 16 years, that demographic experienced a drastic decline, dropping sharply to roughly 62% by 2023. At the exact same time, a new trend emerges among Generation Z. The percentage of religiously unaffiliated youth nearly doubles, rising steeply from 16% to 30%. This demographic shift isn't just a statistic to Moore, it's the core of his political identity. By framing a foreign financial rule as a clear attack on Christians, he creates a bridge between a dry bureaucratic law in India and the cultural anxieties of his supporters at home. The outcry over the FCRA starts to look less like a diplomatic disagreement and more like the strategic export of a domestic culture war. The policy debate provides the stage, but the performance is meant for a nervous audience back in the United States. India's Ministry of External Affairs is now adopting a stance that refuses to offer traditional diplomatic caveats. Their messaging is direct. Legislative matters are internal affairs, and the opinions of foreign lawmakers carry no weight in the Indian Parliament. The immediate pressure test for this stance is approaching fast. Political opposition within India is already aggressively mobilizing their members of parliament to fight the upcoming vote. There is also a looming wildcard. High-profile U.S. political figures could easily escalate the international tension by injecting their own rhetoric into the debate on social media. The Indian government now faces a critical choice. Will they yield to this convergence of international rhetoric and domestic opposition, or will they push the bill through the parliament? Finalizing this legislation sends a message that extends far beyond the control of NGOs. It asserts that India's legislative process functions independently of the demographic anxieties or political needs of foreign capitals.
If you value clarity over chaos, explore more on Clear Lens X.